Why do we do it? Why do we engage the world for gospel impact? Why do we make the sacrifices? Why do we give up the familiarity of our culture? Why do we give up the luxuries and comforts of our society? Why do we invest the time and money training for something others think is absolutely crazy? Why do we fall in love with people we've never before met and do everything in our power to live among them? Why do we traverse expansive oceans, dirt paths, rocky canyons, raging rivers, thick rainforests, snowy peaks, and blistering deserts? Why do we fly on airplanes with dangerous service records? Why do we ride on overpacked buses on broken roads? Why do we take leaky boats through uncertain waters? Why do we walk mile after mile after mile? Why do we choose to live in difficult environments, restricted areas, polluted urban centers, or remote rural villages? Why do we work so hard to get into places others are trying to leave? Places stricken by disease, war, poverty, corruption, and despotism. Why do we learn unfamiliar languages, become immersed in unfamiliar cultures, eat unfamiliar foods, and embrace lifestyles that make us unfamiliar to our own families? Why are we willing to help those that hate us, serve people that suspect us, and work for the good of some who at first wish we would just go away? Why do we raise countless dollars, invest countless hours, and shed countless tears for the billions and counting who have never heard the truth? Why do we obey the call of God to go into all the world, sharing the gospel and making disciples of all peoples? Why are we compelled by love and willing to risk everything?
Mute. Hello everyone, welcome. We've got a special guest today. Today we're talking on technology in the church, and I know post-COVID that is a very important conversation. So I want to introduce myself. You saw me yesterday, you've probably seen me in past live streams with WorldVenture, but I am the digital engagement coordinator, and I'd like to introduce Justin here. Justin Decker from Thailand. Go ahead. What do you do?
So I am providing, as I say, providing tech support for missionaries, ministries, and churches in Thailand, but really becoming a little bit more around the world as well. So trying to be the tech guy for everyone who does not have a tech guy to help them do their ministries just more effectively.
Yeah, and tech guys are very, very important. Whoever's watching out there, if you know the IT people in your church, the people who run your social media, whether that be a person on staff or someone who's a pastor, the associate pastor, give them a little love, a little appreciation. They don't just fix your printer. They actually do a lot of things that help build the reputation of your church in your community, and that's kind of part of his work, a lot of different things of his work. So before we hop into the questions, I do want to let you all know that we welcome your questions. We welcome your questions. So put your questions in the chat. Don't worry about if we've already moved on to another subject. We'll pivot back, and we'd like to hear from you. So if you want to start out with where you're watching from, that would be great. Also, we are putting the links in the chat so that you can go ahead and see what Justin does in Thailand. And there's a QR code if you're watching from YouTube or the website. You can scan that with your phone and be able to view what he does. It's a family ministry. Him and his wife do different things. So, and at another time we'll have both of them on at some point.
Yeah.
So tell me, we shared on our social media a really great story. We talked about tech helping churches. You've been helping a church plant in
Yes.
Thailand, right? So can you tell us about this? You basically said, and we shared the story on WorldVenture social media, that you're building it from the ground up. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so this church plant is done actually through a good friend of mine. He's been there for many years pastoring another church, and so they decided to do the church plant, of course, starting off in his living room, moved off to a hotel like conference room, and they've been doing that for several months, and he was finally able to find a good property for them, and he knew he didn't know what to do for the tech. And so he came to me and asked, hey, would you be willing to help me? And being that I've never done a church plant build out before, I only thought about 2 seconds, and I said, sure, I'd love to help you guys. So it's been interesting because, it's not like a lot of churches you see in America where you got the big open room with other rooms connected to it. It is literally one small room with very short ceilings, I think only a little bit above my head. So thinking through things like, how are we going to put slides up on the wall? You can't do a projector with a really low ceiling. And then you've got these steel beams all the way around the walls too, and there's no holes to run wires through. So working through that, plus the construction that is going to be happening there as well, just to make it very usable for them. So it's been just interesting trying to think through the things of like what to do for the audio visual, for the visual aspect is one, but then the sound and how do we make the sound work in this small room? And a lot of it I don't know, but it's leaning into the other connections that I've made in Bangkok as well to say, hey, what would you do here for the sound? Or what would be the best way to run these wires so we're not going to have interference? Because there's not a lot of shielding with the electrical part, so there's a lot of interference as well. And these are just things that my friend, the Pastor Tarn, he just never would have thought about. So I'm just glad to be able to help walk along with them on it. And I think helping them kind of think about what they want from it as well. Because it's one thing for me to go in there and say, do this, but if it doesn't meet the church and what their needs are, that's the hard part. And I've got to kind of realize that too and just kind of back down from my recommendations and go with what they want.
Yeah, that's hard because you see so much, you have a vision and you see so much that you want to improve upon.
Yes.
And knowing the IT guy that works at our church, my partner church, he does amazing work as well. And without him, we wouldn't have the amazing visuals, the amazing networking with the Wi-Fi and everything so that people can really get into worship. Those visuals are important.
Yes.
I mean, I've been to churches where they had no PowerPoint in there and you're scrambling to figure out what did the pastor last say, and so all this tech stuff is so important.
Yeah, really, you don't want it to be the forefront of it,
Yeah.
but you want it to just supplement and to come alongside
To add to
everything.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's hard because when you're a tech person, you can overwhelm people with the vision,
Yes.
and I have that. I'm in the same way in my field. But yeah, the IT people, the people who run those networks, they're very valuable out there. So how are you mentioned on your ministry profile, how are you using your technology skills to help missionaries and ministries to Thai people? I thought that was kind of interesting because that is a need, very much a big need out there. So tell me a bit about that.
So that was always my heart, just wanting to go to the field, was I want to be able to use my technology skills because that's how I think God has wired me. He gave me this passion. He gave me this skills that I've learned. So it's like, all right, I want to use this back for him and for the gospel work happening. So everyone I would talk to would say, we need help, but they didn't always know what they needed.
Yeah.
So that's part of my job as well, is to kind of just hear their story, hear what they're doing, and try to figure out how I can best supplement them and what they're doing. And by them, it could be an individual missionary. It could be smaller ministries. It could be large ministries, small churches, large churches. I mean, I'm working with one now that it is hundreds of people preparing for a conference of thousands of people on the ground and another 10,000 online. So it can go from the single missionary to 1,000, multi-thousand person conference. And it's just trying to bridge those gaps for them, because most of these people don't have technology skills themselves. I mean, yes, they use social media, they use
Not
phones
the
and
same
computers,
thing, though.
but using it for what you're doing, that's the part that I'm trying to help. And it's really me come alongside their ministries, being part of their ministries.
Yep.
Could be to tie kids, it could be to taking people off of the streets, whatever it may be, trying to be alongside them in their ministry and let technology not be a crutch, but be something that can actually help them as another tool.
Yeah, and that takes skill to teach that, because a lot of them are not techies, and they go into a panic when things aren't working right.
Yes.
When I went to one of the biggest needs in churches is IT stuff. Problem is, churches, mainly the small and medium, have a hard time that particular. And so in 2018, when I went to an IT conference, for another day, being social media person, not IT. But it was amazing because half of the people there were trying to raise support as IT people to help their churches, and they didn't quite know how to get to that point, and people didn't see the need. Without the networking, you don't have worship, the quite the same worship experience.
Mm-hmm.
Without the IT people, you also don't have the security to keep that church safe.
Yes.
And so it is very much needed. So if any of you out there see people like Justin who are trying to help their churches, but they're going basically on support, consider partnering with them. They're just as important as the overseas missionaries, which you're both.
Yeah,
So.
doing both parts of that for sure.
And it's worldwide, as you said. The technology is worldwide, which means we're not stuck to a location.
Yes, and that is one of those things too, especially when you are overseas. And I mean, yes, so I'm working with the Thai people, but in our community, we've got people from all sorts of nationalities with different backgrounds, with different wants and needs. And so it's learning how to balance the multicultural aspect of technology as well, because what the Thais do is very different than what the Americans do and what the Dutch do and the Australians. And so it's
that's difficult.
Figuring out the best way to really help lots of people in their way, because there is a cultural aspect to technology and just how they do things too.
Yeah. There was a time when I was experimenting with when we talk about culture, I was experimenting with different social media platforms. And I was using a video streaming site to talk to people around the world. And I was talking to someone who's a Kurd in Iraq. And I was coming from an American culture. He's coming from his culture. And I didn't know his culture. So I did actually, I made a mistake. I complimented his kids. I called them adorable. And apparently I learned as I grew and got to know all of our global workers, who especially work with Muslim people, basically that it was cursing the kids
I
by
didn't know that
complimenting.
either, actually.
Yeah. So I learned that from a mentor because we have a lot of WorldVenture's well known for having paraclete and coaches, and kind of learned from a mentor that was assigned to me. So yeah, I can understand the cultures. Is it primarily English in these churches, or are they different languages, or primarily Thai?
Every church is very different. So there are a lot of just strictly Thai speaking churches. There are some English speaking churches where their ministry is to the expats, the internationals in Bangkok. And then you've got other ones that are a blending of it. So the church that we attend now has a Thai congregation and a English speaking congregation. And it doesn't mean that all the Thais go to the Thai side. In fact, we've got a lot of internationals go to the Thai side and a lot of Thais go into the international side. So it's a blending of all of it. And so dealing with the language aspect is a whole nother part too, because, especially when we all come together, it's, well, you have some people who only speak Thai and some people who don't speak any Thai. How do we best use the technology for, letting people sing songs together and be able to read the sermon slides and just the announcements? And so it's those things of thinking through everything to make sure it's not going to be only to one audience. You want to try to reach as many people as possible, because there's a lot of people there.
Yeah, can't even imagine that. Coming from the American side, it's fairly straightforward,
Yep.
slides and everything. So speaking of the Thai church, and just letting everyone know who's watching right now, feel free to go ahead and put your questions in the chat if you're watching on our social media platforms. If you're on our website, sorry, but you can come to our Facebook if you want, and you can put in your questions if you have them. So what kind of, I visited Thailand and visited you,
Mhm.
and it was weird being in a country where there wasn't a church on every corner,
Yeah.
and a lot of spirit houses.
That you see on every corner
Yeah.
and in between.
Yeah. So what kind of obstacles does a church plant face in Thailand?
So obviously just the location aspect is one part about it, because you don't have, property there is very hard to come by. In fact, it's a unique part about Thailand and Bangkok especially, where you could be right next to an apartment building, and then there's a large school, and then a very wealthy neighborhood, and then you've got just food stalls, and it's just, you don't have one area for everything. And so the people who are looking for a location, they have to be very creative with what they find. I.e. my friend with his church plant, where it's, probably the size of a small sanctuary, and they've got to split up to 2 floors inside of one that would be really just one, and figure out creative ways to use that for Sunday school and a nursery room and the sanctuary. So,
Man.
looking through all of that is one part. And then during the building aspect is a whole other thing too, because, cultural differences with how we do timelines or how we do schedules. We were, the plant, we were supposed to start the middle of April, and that was my part of actually going through and doing the wiring. And I won't be starting the wiring until August now,
Oh.
just because of the way that getting the power into the right name, and then getting the construction company in, and not everyone is right in a row like we were used to in America, and it's just different. And so that's the part I kind of realized that, timelines are great, but it's kind of a recommendation or what you would like to see, and you just kind of go with the flow of it all as well. Thankfully, so being a Christian in Thailand is not, shunned or anything.
Yeah.
It is very open to all religions. But there is still, things to work through with that, especially with the Thais, because to be Thai is to be Buddhist. And so when you're trying to reach the Thai people and you want to provide like a church or even just one-on-one ministry, you got to break through those cultural barriers where to them, even if they don't typically go to a temple or even, give their, go see the monks every morning, they are still, well, I'm a Buddhist because I'm a Thai. Just like, there's a lot of people in America who may say, well, I'm a Christian, but they don't actually are not practicing it or have the relationship with God. So breaking through that is just, it's a different way than what you would do in America or, India or Spain. There's a very Thai way of doing that. So getting the church there, however big or small it is one thing, but to actually reach the people in a contextual way that works with their culture, that's where I really lean into the pastors and the evangelists, because they have started to figure out different ways to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting you should say that Thais assume to be Buddhist all the time. It's the same thing in America where we had a worker comment on one of our posts on social media where they said that in that country where they both served, that they assumed every American was Christian.
Yes.
And so on that, what's the spiritual makeup of Thailand?
So, while to be Thai, to be Buddhist is not just a saying, about 88% of the country is Buddhist. And then, so the next largest religion there is actually Islam, and that's about 6.5%. So a very big difference there. And right now, the evangelical number is just over 1%, which is daunting. But at the same time, we moved there 3 years ago, and when we were preparing, we were looking at the numbers on Joshua Project, and it was at 0.65%. So in the 3 years that we've been there, it's almost doubled the number of evangelicals there,
That's
which
good.
is really, it's just encouraging, because missionaries have been going to Thailand for decades and decades and decades, and it just seems like it's a really hard ground to break and to get fruit to grow, but it's happening. If you go up to the north, you got some provinces that are about 10%
Yeah.
Christian.
Yeah.
So it really depends on where you're looking at there, but it is definitely not the majority, and definitely not even a very significant number yet.
Yeah, but you keep on persevering and you keep
Yes.
on working towards it and find ways to make that tech and make every piece of what makes a Christian outreach work together.
Correct.
In a partnership. We talk about, a lot of people in my field talk about how the tech, social media, and the in-person experience all work together in a partnership.
Yeah, definitely not different things. It all needs to
Yeah,
work together.
It does. So when when you're in Thailand, it's not like there's a Best Buy in every corner. And if you happen to forget something, like someone I know, then you kind of feel a little stuck because Bangkok is a huge mega city.
Yes.
And it's not so obvious to find these places. So where do you, obviously you need wiring, you need all this stuff. Where are you shopping for the tech supplies in Thailand when you need them?
You got to be creative, that's for sure. So while there is you don't have the Best Buys, there are some kind of the big box shops there. You've got Banana and Advice and Jib. It's different names for it all, but it's really a place if you want to go there and get high quality products that you don't have to worry about it being defective or counterfeit.
Yeah.
Those ones you go to, but you're paying the extra price for it. Whereas there are definitely lots of smaller shops. In fact, a lot of malls will have a tech area you go to, and it's like an entire floor, and it's all the tech stores. And a lot of them are really great, and you can go get things repaired. You can get, when it comes to wiring, you can get wires made to your size. But unfortunately, when you're looking at equipment, there's a lot of counterfeit goods out there. So that's one of the things you have to go through. And even with online, they've got a site called Lazada that's basically like their Amazon. And then also like AliExpress, getting products in from China. It's readily available. You can get it in pretty easily, but you got to weed through those sellers sometimes. And I've had it where I get something in and it's not what I ordered whatsoever. And I go to get a refund and the seller's gone. So it's definitely being creative with all of that of like, okay, I need to get this. How much risk am I willing to take? But then also just trying to get secondhand. I mean, there's a lot of things you can get used from people who are transitioning through, churches who are, they have old equipment that they're getting rid of. Knowing ways to find that is really helpful, especially for the smaller churches just starting off. You can't just go out there and swipe the credit card and get everything you want, or in Thailand, scan the QR code.
So if you were to get visiting short-term people or visiting churches, do you ever ask them for
all the time to bring stuff over? Because just the import fees on a lot of things that we use. I mean, a lot of the brands that you may see in churches are like Black Magic or anything, or the big camera brands, they have it there, but you're usually paying 10, 20, 30% more. So quite often it's reaching out and saying, hey, I know you're coming in April. Do you think I can send some stuff to you and you can bring it over? Happens all the time. In fact, I will be bringing some stuff back again this time for us and for others who are needing it as well. So finding those creative ways, and it's not always in America too. You can get some things over in Europe. So if you just know who to ask to kind of bring those things over for you, it's very helpful.
So it is said in other publications that organizations will spend a lot of money on tech, even in the U.S., just to keep up. So in the U.S. and in Thailand, what are some cost-saving tips for our church planters out there that you can tell them?
So I would definitely say for the church plant, or even the really small churches, the church that we attend would be that. The things that you have, evaluate what you have, or that you have on hand, because quite often people will just plug it in and go with it, but not use it in the best way. So if you can find the best ways to use what you have, whether it's cameras or projectors or lighting, figuring out how do I best use what we have on hand versus just going and buying new, because you could go buy new and it doesn't do as well as you need to because you know how to use it. One of my friends who's a missionary named Matt Brandon does a lot of photography lessons and teaching people how to actually sell themselves with photography using it could be a cell phone camera, it could be an old digital camera, it could be a point and shoot. Whatever it is, it's like, let's use this in a better way. And so I've taken that with our church of using, I think they're 15 to 20-year-old little camcorders.
Yep.
And that's what we use for our live stream, but figuring out the best settings for it. Let's work on the lighting. So what you have, figure out how to use it. Looking secondhand is really, really good. I mean, a lot of equipment doesn't just die after 5 years of use, but there are the bigger churches who are cycling through, and they're doing a big upgrade. They budgeted for it. If you can make connections with those churches, don't just be within you. Make relationships with the other guys who are in there, that are doing technology. Find out, oh, you guys are upgrading your speaker system. What are you doing with your old speakers? And that may be a way that you can, reuse a lot of those things without going and just buying new, because it's, that's what I heard on YouTube. I need to have this brand. If you can get it used, that will definitely be very helpful.
Yeah, beware of those YouTube things, because that you can get all the ads. They're going to tell you it's wonderful, it works great. But we have a saying here at WorldVenture, which is do what works.
Yes.
And basically, like with social media, when I do some church consults with our partner churches sometimes, I'll tell them, look, if you don't have a setup, just simply putting a phone on a tripod and just interacting as an online host with your phone on silent. And I stress on silent. You definitely want it on silent. But you can do very simple digital online ministry with very simple equipment without having to have even it plugged in the soundboard if you're that small of a church.
Yes.
Because with streaming, you do need licensing for the music. So
it's finding out all those things that you need to do. And I think it's just, you learn that through working with people, whether it's with you or making other connections of like, hey, how do we use what we have?
Yeah.
And getting someone who can kind of consult you that way is really, really useful.
Yeah, I mean, with the soundboard, it's better sound, obviously, but if you have nothing else, then at least you have that and the message gets out. So what kind of media are you producing for your Thai church, and do you see good engagement with it?
So, it's funny you talking about just the starting out with the cell phone. That's actually where we started off with there was just there. It was during COVID, it was when we came to Thailand, and they had to very quickly jump on the live stream train. So they were just using Zoom with a little camera right there with the phone, and that's what I came into. And so, taking them from that to saying, okay, well, yes, we're doing Zoom within our congregation, but let's look at possibly using YouTube or Facebook to do our live stream. So we ended up moving to YouTube. Good. And definitely found the reach was immense, especially on the Thai side, actually. Yeah. The international side, we're usually looking at 100 to 200 views per sermon, which is great. But then you get on the Thai side, on an average, a low Sunday, it's probably about 500 to 600, sometimes over 1,000 to 2,000. And it's, so just getting out there knowing, what to use. So they're using both YouTube and Facebook. We're only using YouTube right now, but trying to find different ways of doing that. So it's like, all right, how do we get just the visual aspect of it out there? And part of that as well has been doing a lot of the small graphics for them. So we started off just having a PowerPoint slide that we'd update the date on, and that was our thumbnail. And it got the information, hey, here's our church, here's when we meet, but said nothing about the sermon series. Yeah. So I've got some skills with graphic things, but I hadn't done it in a while. So I just jumped straight to Canva and started building things on there. Amazing just what you can build with a lot of the templates. And if you want to change it up a little bit, you can do that. But it's amazing to see just internally how much more people like that. Just you would actually have people come and you say, wow, who made that art? That was really great. And realizing, oh, okay, well, I didn't think it was all that, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I wouldn't say we've seen the YouTube engagement go up immensely, but it also hasn't been a huge focus of us either. So just trying to have good art that tells the story, whether it's a thumbnail for the sermon series, if it's an announcement for the women's gathering that's happened, making it so that it is appealing, but it's memorable as well, so people know what's happening. Our Thai side does things differently than we do with it, but we're trying to bring us kind of more into alignment as well. So whether it's using the same type of slides, templates, or, again, when we both got on YouTube, that was great. So we had one channel for everyone to go through. But we have some work to do, using our social media better and, actually trying to advertise ourselves or really to tell like, hey, this is who we are. Because, yes, there's not a lot of churches, but you also don't always find the churches. So we want to be a little bit better at that, of being able to, I hate saying sell the church, but really it's like making sure people know, hey, here's a community you can go to, and have a Thai and international mingling there.
Yeah, in the U.S. side of things, what we find that works is the online hosting, which is like your greeters.
Yes.
To where, like what you guys see right now online, you see someone talking to you via the chat. That's called an online host. And what we found is that the engagement, the fellowship, the connection is actually what shows that you are a friendly church.
It makes total sense.
Yeah, and so you have that. Now YouTube is, a lot of people like to watch it on YouTube. They throw it to their TVs.
Mm-hmm.
Engagement, unless you're a mega church, is kind of on the poor side. However, it doesn't mean that it doesn't bring people to church.
Yes.
But Facebook is very high engagement. In fact, I manage a digital team at Grace Church, my partner church in Arizona, and basically the online hosts we have that come every week for both services, they talk to others, and people who live all the way in Wisconsin and Michigan consider this their home church.
Because you've got that connection, that engagement, and
Yep.
you're not just watching a video at that time.
Correct.
You are part of the service.
Christian consumerism is a problem in in-person church, but it's also a problem online.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was an article that was published a couple of years ago, I think it was now, in our local newspaper, where an older person was quoted as saying, when the article was about online churches, "Hey, I can watch the service in my pajamas from home." And that is really not the impression you really want to give. You want to, one of the biggest problems, especially during COVID, was the fact that we saw people willing to do that, but less willing to live as Jesus asked us to make disciples, which means from your keyboard or your phone during the online service. And one of the things that our audience can do to help your churches is just simply share your sermon notes in the online chat. As you hear something that affects you, you can put it in there. And don't worry about being wrong, because it's an opportunity for people like Justin or others to actually go in and reply and maybe help disciple you or others, because there's many people who will eavesdrop.
Yes, that is for sure. And actually, just thinking of that as well, then everyone who is engaging, whether it's the people in the church running the moderating or anyone else, they're all helping to disciple and to spread that news as well.
Exactly. And that's what we're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when social media first entered the scene, everyone, of course, was beginning to talk about the ethics. They were terrified of it. It's the end of the world. Now AI has entered the scene, and yes, there's some serious things to worry about. There are some serious things, more serious than social media, but some of the same questions are starting to float about, which will eventually probably lead to what's our theology about it.
Mm-hmm.
So how are the Thai churches using AI and social media right now, including any not Christian schools or whatnot?
So honestly, I think they have not really approached the AI whole scene too much that we've seen. And I think that's just because there's a lot of things that are usually kind of a step or so behind, or just not as quick to jump in and adopt. And I think that quick adoption part is what, seeing a lot of churches, in the US or other areas would jump into it. In Thailand, we haven't seen too much on the AI side, although a lot of the schools, they have to be on top of it. So our boys go to a Christian international school, it's an international community school there, and they saw it and they did not shy away. They said, we have to hit this head on, which was great because, a lot of the teachers who, especially when it comes to writing assignments, knowing how do we need to engage this, but a lot of the other teachers said, let's embrace it, guys. This is a new tool we have. How do we use this? And they're trying to teach them, responsible ways of using, whether it's ChatGPT or AI art tools, whatever it may be, teaching these kids how to use it, because if not, someone's going to teach them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how it's going to really, enter the church. I'm sure there's definitely a lot of people who are using, I've heard a lot of them just using it for sermon note ideas. Don't let it write your sermon, but hey, it's a tool to give you ideas. Yeah. So now with social media, I would say as well, some churches do it really well. Some churches don't do it very well.
Same as US, yeah.
Yes. In fact, so for most businesses, or maybe not most, but a large number of them, having a Facebook page is their website. So they may pick a URL, and then you go to the URL and you realize it doesn't work. But their Facebook page is their website, and that's the same thing for a lot of churches. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them just use it for, hey, here's our sermon this week, here's our sermon this week, here's our sermon this week.
Yes, some U.S. churches do that too.
Very, very common. But then you get some other ones who are really trying to engage their member base and those who are just visiting as well. So it's great to see that a lot of them are doing it, but there's definitely a lot of work to be done to not just let it be, hey, we have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram. It's like, how are we actually using it? And if we're not, let's just cut it off for now until we can start using it better, which was our church. We had a Twitter, had an Instagram, and I looked back and it had been 8 years since we had put anything on them. I was like, all right, we need to just pause this for now until we can do it right. But they do other social media. So one app they use is called Line. And it's a communications app, but it's kind of their everything app. Businesses, that's the way to get a hold of a business. And with churches, it is so common that you're going to be part of tens, maybe even hundreds of groups. And like every church has a Line group that everyone is part of. And that's how people are collaborating with each other. So not as much of a way it's not like a Facebook or an Instagram or Twitter X, it's, you're using this, but it is still a way that people can stay in touch. They can share prayer requests. They can get announcement ideas or what's going on. So they're using what is popular there versus just, oh, well, I think that was what before. We got to get an Instagram, but we're not going to use it. Let's just use what we're using well.
Yeah. That's one thing that I often tell people. It's like, if you have, just because a new shiny thing pops up, there are over, last I read, is over between 300 and 400 social media platforms and messaging apps and all that. And now it's gotten to the point where everything is definitely, it depends on area, it depends on age group, it depends upon culture, everything. And so basically when a church is wondering which to be on, it's the wrong question. The right question is, where are your people hanging out, and then where is your community hanging out? Hang out there.
Yeah, you don't need to follow everyone else. No. I mean, you can see it, observe, decide, but yeah, you really got to know your people, because you're not going to be able to direct them to somewhere else.
Yeah, and with as far as the ethics, that's all part of it. There's a really great book. This is what I give to most as a gift to most of the people I consult with. It's called Meta Church by Dave Adamson. And it's a really good one, best one I've seen so far, to where he outlines the theology of all this stuff, what the Bible says about it.
Very interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm going to tell you that they didn't have social media back then, but with the way that he puts it, the Bible is applicable to our online behavior and what we do. And so it's no different than Paul's letter writing. But what I really like about what he wrote is that he identified that the church has changed. It is hybrid now. And what that means is you're going to find people that are going to church only online on Sunday, but they might go to an in-person Bible study or event during the week and volunteer somewhere. And then you might have somebody who goes to only on in-person stuff and people who will only do online stuff. And so, but if they're interacting, if they're engaging, if they're doing fellowship with others, they're volunteering in their community or in their church, how is that any less Christian, is what his question was. And I thought that was very well put.
Yeah, are you seeing the body grow, or are you seeing the body be the body on all aspects, whether it's online or in person? That's really should be more of the goal.
It used to be when I talked about there's a VR church out there that I attended a couple of times, and DJ Bishop, I forgot his name now, but anyway, some people ask, well, they need to come to in person. I'm like, well, I don't worry about whether they come to in person, because we're made for fellowship. We're made to connect, whether we're fully introverted or not. We're made to connect, and we're going to want that connection. So that means as God grows our hearts, we're going to eventually reach out.
Seeking those areas. Maybe I've seen the same. Actually, there is a Minecraft community that they have Minecraft Bible studies and Minecraft church services, because it's meeting the people where they are. And again, you can't say, well, that's not where God is, because it's like, no, God is everywhere. He's going to be within the metaverse. He's going to be on Minecraft. There's many ways that you can get the gospel out there.
Exactly. So how are you getting people to help in tech? And what does helping in tech look like in Thai churches? Because as you know, in the U.S. church, people are a little confused. So
the same in Thailand. it is always, that is my constant battle, is trying to have people to volunteer and cover the things that we're doing, because, you know, a lot of people don't realize, you know, what goes into a regular Sunday service or things throughout the week when it comes to technology. And I think a lot of it's just because they don't know, they may get intimidated. And so one of the ways I've been able to just get people to consider is like, hey, come sit behind the desk with me, just watch and see what I'm doing. To show them it's not this scary thing. You don't have to have like a production degree or anything. You know, I was like, if you can operate a computer, you can do what we're doing. And so we have 7th graders. Actually, we had a few 6th graders helping with it. And then we have someone who, I think she's in her 60s, since we have the entire gambit of everyone who they have a heart for it. And it's like trying to get them plugged in how they can. Mm-hmm. In fact, we've started doing that more with our sound side. We had one guy who's been running the sound for, I think it was 7 or 8 years. And he was just graduating and was going to be leaving. And so we realized, okay, we need to start building at this area as well and finding where it's like, we can teach you how to do this. Yep. So that's always been a recommendation for everybody, whether it's working the media side, whether it's working in worship or with the kids, it's like, just be open to be taught and see, all right, is this what God has at bay? Because we're all supposed to be working together. It's not, well, I'm not part of the staff or I'm not part of the group, you know, that's just for them. It's like, no, the whole body is taking care of the body here. Get everyone to be able to do a little bit of their part.
Yep. Yeah, that's the same in U.S. churches. It's funny. I often advise churches, don't ask for tech or media help because they're going to have a different interpretation what that means. Be specific. Like I run a digital team at Grace Church, which is my home church. And so this digital team was started out with, first of all, it was started as a team of one, me. When we were starting the live stream. But then eventually I started asking basically how can we expand this? So I asked 2 people personal invite to join about a month before the government shut us down for COVID. So good timing on God's part. And so we actually got this team together. We started building it up. We started to see phenomenal responses, especially in giving. During a time when people weren't.
We're scared to give, yeah.
And it was coming from out of state. So, wow. Yeah, and it was very, very good. But then I discovered one of our volunteers was fluent in ASL. And so she had a passion for it. And like I always say, you can teach tech, but you can't teach heart.
Yes.
They have to have heart regardless of what they know of tech. Yeah. So she started learning. We worked with our church leadership and our IT guy, and we didn't know if we had any deaf people in the area, and we went ahead and streamed them with the pastor on Facebook. And now we have about, I think, 6 to 9 deaf people attending in person.
Wow.
A combination of online and word of mouth and a lot of things we can't measure. But we started having that, and so it does work, but I would recommend highly that you plug in that people who are trying to figure out tech volunteers, figure out what their strength is. Mm-hmm. Someone who teaches on Sunday school can be videotaped for a mini devotional during the week.
Yep.
Someone who basically does children's ministry can create some children's resources that can be consumed by the public.
And if it's not out there, then people are not going to have the opportunity to actually receive it. So when it comes to the ASL, people may not realize, hey, we need this, until all of a sudden you see there are people who need it. And so, you got to just put yourself out there, be willing to try. Hey, let's try and see if this works, and see if it. And again, I think whether or not it works, if someone's got a heart into it and it's not hurting, then letting them have a way that they can serve their body is just always going to be good.
Yeah.
But you got to, sometimes it's those personal invites to say, hey, would you be willing to try this out? And amazing to see just the heart that people have for it.
I mean, I'm proud of the team. I'm proud of some of the church communicators that I've trained. They have a real heart for the people. They're willing to try new things. They're willing to do everything. And those are the volunteers we really need. The Thai churches need it. And the U.S. churches need it, and it's not necessarily something mechanical that you need, but it's just something that you release the burden, because most times in these small to medium churches, they're actually, it's the associate pastor that's doing it, or all the tech stuff, or people are doing double duty.
Yes.
They're taking vacations. I know one that uses her vacation before she can truly relax. She has to do some housekeeping work on the back end of things. And so a lot of church communicators, a lot of tech people, they're hard workers.
Yes, for sure. And it's really hard to wear all the hats for everything.
Yep.
And honestly, when you do, you're also taking away those opportunities for other people to do it.
Yep.
In fact, actually, one thing that's really coming to mind is just how these ministries can be a way to minister to the workers. We have one of the students who's working with us is actually from Japan, from a non-Christian family, but through the school that he attends with my boys and working with me, he helps run the cameras and
Awesome.
loves to. He's that kid who comes up, and I'll be doing cameras one week, and he goes, "Hey, Mr. Justin, can I run cameras today?" Go ahead and sit down. It's all you. But really, just like his mom has seen the change in him and saying, and she actually told my wife and I, she's like, we love that he loves Christ. They're not Christians, at all, but they're seeing the change in their son, and they're seeing what it's doing. And just him being able to serve in the church, he realizes I'm part of this, and being, it's not just me coming and receiving, it's I'm actually helping with all this as well. And we've seen so much growth in him in it.
Awesome. That is awesome. So now, as we close, just remember, everyone, go ahead and put in your questions. You might want to hurry up and type it in. But before we close, I wanted to ask you, how can people pray for you and your family, in your ministry, professionally, personally, and all that?
So, we've only been in Thailand 3 years, which is very, very small amount of time. So we are still, getting into the culture, getting into the language. The language is a very, very hard part. And in fact, for me, a lot of the tech workers that are in Thailand only speak Thai. And I'm not a language guy. I knew that going in, but I knew that I needed to learn Thai. So definitely just praying that I can find that way to allow me to start, being able to understand the language and be able to start making those conversations, because I think those are some of the connections that I'm missing, is that language barrier. So maybe to break through that, and then really just trying to be, usable by God wherever. That organization I'm helping out with, with the missions conference coming up, it just came through one of those, hey, we hear you, and I'm not a security professional, but I know security, and so just being willing to do that. So always just wanting God to all right, Lord, you direct me and tell me when to say no and when to say yes. And really just, our family loves Thailand, and so really just trying to be effective there. From my wife works at the Thai school, trying to just really understand the Thai people as well as we can, and just have those opportunities for the discussions to share with them, what does God's truth and love actually provide? Because there's a lot of people who are just so broken, and they need that love. They just don't know it yet. So just that we can be available and really looking for those opportunities just to get to share the truths little by little.
Awesome. So as you are watching this, whether now or later, be sure if you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat, even if it's not live anymore. I'll make sure that Justin gets the questions. You can also reach out to me if you have any questions about digital ministry as well. You can find both our links on the chat, and you can see what each of us do in our individual ministries. So Justin, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to go ahead and close this in prayer today, and so then we'll go ahead and pray. Lord, thank you for Justin's work. Thank you for all who do IT work, and thank you for his vision. Thank you for his perseverance in language. Thank you just for him being with WorldVenture. In Jesus' name we praise. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.